Hey, beautiful soul. Welcome to the Cosmic Catchup. I'm Corri.
And I'm Dana. We're real-life sisters who said no thanks to the 9-to-5 grind and yes, please, to the stars, spirit, and soul-led living.
Around here, we're talking ascension, astrology, human design, sound healing, and the messy magic of waking up.
So if you've ever thought, there's got to be more than this, you're our people. Two sisters, deep talks, whole lot of magic. Let's catch up. Hi. You're being
Hi.
so silly. I like it.
Well, yeah. Energy today.
You've been on fire.
I've been having the grumblies for a while. So today's the first day. I mean, I did have some grumblies at my family, but they needed it.
It's truth bombs. We don't call them grumblies. They're truth bombs.
They were truth bombs. But the other days I was really grumbly.
Okay. Yeah,
grouchy.
that's
So
fair.
I feel better today.
I'm glad.
Yeah.
I'm glad to
You?
hear it. I'm feeling okay. I've been in my head a lot, overly in my head. So it's been a little bit of a practice to get out of that.
Get out of there.
Yeah, get out of there. There's nothing good that happens in my head.
Nothing good.
Nothing good.
Well, today we're actually going to talk about the dark night of the soul. And that's a phrase that you hear in the spiritual community a lot. If you are unfamiliar with that, then please do listen. We're going to talk about what is the dark night of the soul. We're going to share some stories on our own personal journeys. We're going to talk a little bit about perhaps what may trigger a dark night of the soul, and then how to come out the other side. So before we get started, though, we thought we would have our astrological forecast.
Yes.
And any tie-ins with the dark night coming up?
A little bit for sure. So this week, we've got some astrology that could lean into that. I think this is going to air on the 18th of June, and right around now, we have Jupiter in Cancer squaring Neptune in Aries, 2 degrees. So this is the early degrees of Cancer and Aries. And those squares, a square is a 90-degree angle, and it creates a pressure point. And it can feel... squares can feel like challenges that we're trying to move through and a little bit difficult and sticky. But the point is we learn lessons from them and we grow from those squares. So they're not a bad thing. They just don't always feel comfortable going through them. So what does Jupiter in Cancer and Neptune in Aries square bring up? Well, this can be when we start questioning the bigger picture. So we start having lots of doubts. We lose faith. We lose our optimism, potentially. That just dissolved away. That lack of trust in the present and the future, typically stemming from situations from the past. So we forget that the past does not indicate the future. The past does not cause the future. So if we can let that go and say, just because it happened before doesn't mean it's going to happen again. But during this transit, it can feel like we start doubting that. We don't have that trust. We lose it. It all sort of dissolves. This is where we are really trying to feel safe in the unknown. As we know, the world around us might feel very unstable and unsteady, and we're looking for that safety and security and maybe having a hard time finding it or falling into old patterns or old habits to find it. So if we shop to find comfort and we're trying to break that habit, it might pop up during this time, or overeating or oversleeping or whatever that might be for the individual. And we might be hesitant to follow new paths. So Neptune is opening up new possibilities, and that is kind of scary for people. So there can be a hesitant to follow what you maybe know in your gut is telling you to do, or you know and trusting your intuition, you're starting to doubt it. So as I mentioned, I've been in my head a lot this week. So there's a little bit of a tie into that. But the beauty of it is during this transit, we talk about the square is meant to grow. So we're truly trying to grow in our spiritual gifts. We're trying to grow in our faith and grow in our trust, in ourselves, in our own divine sovereignty. So it feels a little yucky at first, but then we grow into it. And for some, it could be a trigger for a dark night, as we talk about this a little bit more. A couple other things to point out. On the 20th, we start Cancer season. So that's a really
Yay.
It's a water sign. You should love it.
It's an emotional
It's an emotional water sign. So we might feel the need for a little bit more comforts of home, more of that self-care, which is really important right now anyway. So there's a beautiful supportive energy for more self-care during this
which
time.
is very important.
Very important.
Yeah.
So this is a good time to care for your inner child. Do things that you found fun as a little kid, whether that's spinning in circles in your backyard or coloring or whatever makes your inner child feel good,
Dancing to some 80s tunes.
Heck
That's
yeah.
my fave.
Get the chalk out and go, draw on the sidewalk.
It's real hot in Texas.
It's real hot in Texas. So maybe not outdoor things, but indoor
How about
things.
indoor things?
Perfectly acceptable.
Hula hooping?
Yeah, girl. It's good for the core.
Yeah.
We also have Mars has moved into Virgo. So that Mars represents our energy, our motivation, our stamina. So Virgo is a mutable earth sign. So you might have a little bit easier time multitasking, or you might feel really scattered with your energy and kind of trying to do 10 things at once. Runs the gamut. It's also a time that we really focus on our health and our well-being. So again, that's a really supportive energy with Virgo and the Virgo and Cancers play nice together. So it's a good supportive energy for that. So while we go through this tough square, there is some supportive energy also helping out at that time. So, I mean, there's a lot more going on astrologically, but we're not going to get into all that on this podcast.
Well, that does sound like a lot.
It is, but it's great stuff.
But yeah, all good stuff. And again, we said it's not good or bad. It's just did you bring your umbrella or not?
That's right. How do you want to use the energy?
I'm going to take my umbrella.
Take your umbrella. So,
I'm ready.
Bust out the 80s tunes.
I'm ready for whatever.
Yeah.
Awesome. Okay. Well, should we dive into our topic?
Let's dive into the topic. We're going to get raw and vulnerable in this one.
Yeah.
Awkward. I want you to know before we begin, disclaimer, we are both mentally and physically well now. We're talking about, maybe, but the idea of we're going to get into some, dark thoughts that happened a long time ago, and we have gone through and we're out the other side, so nobody get worried about us.
It's true. We're good. Well, let's start with the term dark night of the soul.
Yeah, where does that come from?
Where does it come from?
Yeah. Do you know?
No.
Clearly we did not do our research for this podcast. I have my notes here. Yes. It originated from the writings of St. John of the Cross, a 16th century mystic monk. The phrase was coined to describe a painful stage in the spiritual path where one feels abandoned, lost, and spiritually dry. But plot twist, it's actually a sacred upgrade in disguise.
Oh, well, I like that definition. That's actually sounds not too terrible. Yeah, and I think Dana and I were talking earlier. We talk a lot about like a spiritual awakening, and really what that is it's really about the soul. It's a soul awakening. It's a soul death, a little bit, if you will.
The
transformation.
The ego death.
Death.
Very much involved as part of this process.
Yeah.
And it's the conditioned ego. I think so much in the spiritual community, we talk about you have to have your ego death or kill your ego. No. Like your ego is a part of you. Mm-hmm. It is not a bad thing. It is not your enemy, but it also shouldn't be the thing that leads you or drives you. It is a passenger in your vehicle, not the driver of the vehicle. And it's important to make peace with your ego and to heal the ego, not to kill it.
The ego does like to drive.
It does like to drive. It thinks it knows best.
Yes.
But its sole purpose is just try to keep us safe.
Yeah.
And we just have to keep reminding it that it is always safe.
Yeah.
It doesn't need to drive.
Yeah. Yeah.
We talk about what it is. So how do you identify for going through the dark night? Like, what are the symptoms? What are the signs?
I think for me, I remember I felt a lack of purpose. Mm-hmm. I thought there has to be more than this. And I won't use the term, I was not depressed. I personally was not. I don't think I was in a place of depression, but I felt very lost, very much of, I don't know what to do with myself or my life, feeling just struggling to make sense of what was in front of me. And I consider I had a good life, or I still do. But at the time, I remember thinking, I have a good husband, I have kids, like we're doing all the things, but I was like, this is meh.
Mm-hmm.
So I felt very lost.
Yeah.
And that was, for me, that was I felt lost for a very long time. What about you? Symptoms?
Yeah, I think there's multiple ways to experience a dark night. You could have one really big one. You can have that's me. You can have lots of little ones.
That's me.
You can have a big one and then another big one and then another big one. You can have a big one and then lots of little ones, or you can have lots of little ones and then a big one. Like there's no
right or wrong.
There's no one size fits all to a dark night. But definitely I felt the same as the feeling of loss. Like I didn't know who I was. And we talk about that ego death. That's what I mean by the ego death, is all of the ways that I identified myself, all of the stories I told myself about who I was, all of the titles that I held, really crumbled away. And then I was left with no clue who I was.
Well, there's the image that you portray.
Yeah.
But then it's, what do you feel on the inside? And I think the image that you portrayed still existed, but you no longer associated with that image, but you didn't know what you associated with anymore.
Yeah, right? I think to the outside world, I maybe looked the same. Mm-hmm. And that was me faking it a lot, of being who I thought I was supposed to be, but it not resonating inside and not knowing what was inside.
Yeah.
Like totally lost from that perspective. Same thing with you. I felt like the things that I used to enjoy, I didn't enjoy anymore, or they felt meaningless or purposeless. There was a lot of things I did for distraction to try to like not feel the hard feelings. The old coping mechanisms didn't work anymore. And I will say I used a lot of medication, like prescription medication, as a coping mechanism, and it really wasn't helping. Yeah, I think it's a lot of that was just sort of like not knowing what direction to go in either. Like I would just, to your point when you said you were lost, it was like, it feels like when your computer or you're watching a video and it's like rebuffering and there's just that spinning wheel. That's what it felt like on the inside. It was a nonstop spin, and with no idea when that was going to end, when it was going to kick in again, what I was supposed to do. It's like you talk about, it's dark. Like you've gone into the blindness of things, a lack of light, we'll say, because it's the dark night. It's the lack of light showing you the way.
And sometimes it can feel like you've been abandoned from from God, source. We've always been very faithful growing up, and so always knew we had God and Jesus and angels to rely on, but it can feel sometimes that it's just quiet.
There's nothing.
There's nothing. There's no connection. There's no response, in a sense of you feel alone, and even surrounded by people that you know and love. Again, I had a husband and kids and felt very much loved by them, but just didn't feel a connection to something greater. And I think that's also where, unbeknownst to us at the time, but that's where the transformation starts. And a dark night of the soul, again, while it doesn't feel good when you're going through it, it's almost necessary to get to the other side and just see things completely different.
A lot of analogies talk about the womb and how it is utter darkness in there. And from that space, life and light are created. So chaos starts in the dark, and then you add that ray of light and something is created from that darkness. So you cannot create until there is some darkness, really, to have something to create from. The analogy of the butterfly, the caterpillar goes into its chrysalis, it turns to goo, which I didn't know until recently. It turns into a gooey soup, and then it is re-put back together into a butterfly. And it has to struggle to get out of its chrysalis, its cocoon, in order to make sure its wings are strong enough to fly. So it is the perfect analogy in my mind for going through that dark night is you're going along.
Lots of good ones.
It's right. It's lots of good ones. And this don't come from
you
me.
didn't create them.
No,
You just read them.
I read them. I've seen them
good.
from other spiritual teachers. The butterfly has been associated with transformation for ever from that perspective. So but I think it's so apt in that sense of when you're going along as your caterpillar self, munching on your leaves, doing your caterpillar thing like you think you're supposed to. And then one day you're just sparked into creating this isolation in this dark place. And you go through this very deep and you have to deconstruct yourself, deconstruct your identity, and then put it back together and go through some struggles in order to then fly and be your most beautiful self.
You've just made me realize that when I get to heaven, I'm going to ask God how he decided to create the caterpillar to the butterfly, because that's some weird shit.
It was created to help remind us of who we are and how we are here to move through this existence.
I don't want to be goo.
Well, you already were goo.
I guess, well, not as much as you were.
Let's not compare.
Comparison is the thief of joy.
The thief of joy.
Fair enough.
Apparently I had more to unwind than you did, and that's okay.
You know what? Different. Everything's different.
Everything is different.
Well, let's talk about
our stories.
Well, first I want to talk about what triggers, because I think that will lead into the story. So, what can trigger a dark night of the soul?
Well, lots of things. Astrologically speaking, there are some transits that probably trigger it in some people more quickly than others. So you have Saturn returns. When Saturn comes back to the place it was when you were born in your birth chart, so same sign, same degree, point is in your birth chart.
Around 28 years old,
28 to 30.
Okay.
It happens about every 29-ish years.
And we look at solar returns in human design as well.
So when that happens for a Saturn return, you have to, for the next 30 years, re-identify every area of your life in a new way, seeing it through a new perspective. Typically, the first one happens, between 28 and 30, and you're now redefining authority in your life as you being the authoritative figure, which can be shocking for some people, especially in these younger generations when maybe they were really coddled or taken care of in a way that they didn't have to be the authority in their life. And that was really easy because somebody else always took care of things for them. And now they have to do it themselves. That can be really hard, and that can spark a dark night. You have another one, 30 years later, so around age 60. So maybe at that point you're like, wow, I did everything that I thought I was supposed to, and I still don't find fulfillment. And now you're having to sort of redefine life again. Other ones can be the Uranus opposition, which happens between 40 and 42. So that layman's terms are called the midlife crisis. I like to call it, astrology calls it the midlife awakening. So that's another time that it can be sparked of like, wow, I don't have the meaning in my life that I thought I would, and having to make sudden changes in your life.
That might have been mine.
Yeah, Pluto transits can do it. If Pluto's transiting a particular house or placement within your natal chart, Pluto comes to destroy and rebuild for sure. Chiron transits. Chiron is the wounded healer. It's an asteroid, and it's like there's generational wounds that we are here to heal in that aspect. So when that's triggered by various aspects, that too can spark a dark night. It doesn't have to be astrological. It can just be things in your life that are building to that space where it's like, again, we believe, right? We've talked about this. We believe we sort of plan out our lives before we get here. And so there can just be your soul said, this is the time, this is the age when you're going to have this experience. And it's going to lead you to remember more of who you really are. And so this is the time and place when I picked for it to happen. So it doesn't have to be triggered by anything other than your soul contracts. So,
yeah. And I like to intermix human design and the gene keys because I think they're very relevant together. And so with the gene keys, you have a core wound, and that, as that starts to maybe come to surface, that can also be a part of or trigger a dark night when you start really understanding and getting into that. So there are certainly different ways that those dark nights can come about. The other thing is it can be all of a sudden, maybe there's a divorce. Could be you or even a parent. It could be a job loss. It could be any kind of loss, maybe a death. So anything that would be of significance or meaning to you can trigger a dark night.
Yeah, definitely.
So I think that's a good segue into then the stories of dark nights, or my many nights, and maybe your one dark. Would you like to start? Because I know we started talking about yours a little bit in the first episode when we talked about spiritual awakening, because that's essentially when you have that dark night leads into this awakening of things are very different than what you thought or imagined, and to me in the best possible way.
Oh yeah.
But it's going to ebb and flow.
I look back on that time with love and compassion for who I was then. I had the big dark night, and it lasted a long time. But I had a lot of opportunity, I will say, to wake up sooner than I did. So I think in me choosing to ignore those signs or look for rational 3D ways of explaining them, that it delayed and compounded my experience.
I just have to chime in real quick, because I don't know if you know this, but your core wound is the gate 57. It's intuition. And so that is where your core wound is really about second guessing and trying to put logic to it versus trusting that intuition. And so the fact that you said that, I was like, oh, there it is.
Totally made sense.
So,
more wounds.
Yeah.
So my back issues, I think I mentioned my back issues started, I think around 2008. And I think I called you and like, who was your pain, your back guy? Cause you'd already had gone through some of this. So went and ran the gamut of things, medications to treat it, steroid injections. So for quite some time, I was on hydrocodone and muscle relaxers just to sort of survive and move through, and kind of on and off of them, right? So after starting like the epidural steroid injections, I would like be fine for a couple months, and
you're doing physical therapy. You're working on
I'm doing whatever it is they prescribed me to do. And the 3D logical piece in my brain was like, well, mom had back issues, Corri had back issues. It's genetic. It's just genetic. It's just something I was going to have. Instead of looking at, oh, I'm in a job that I don't love, and I am having anxiety and worry and stress about this job, but I think I'm supposed to like this job, and I think I'm supposed to be doing this. This is what I went to college to do, and I'm lucky to have a job, and I work with really great people, and I've made lots of friends. But I also at the time was feeling like, I had a house, I had a dog, I was living the life I thought I was supposed to live. I didn't have any romantic relationships, and that was depressing at that point in my life. But everything else, I had beautiful friends and family and wonderful things that I was supposed to have in my life. But I was still suffering from a lot of anxiety and a lot of depression. So I was also on Prozac and Xanax while I'm also taking
like a cocktail,
right? Like, this is probably not safe. But this is what I did. Like, I knew exactly how long it would take for those medications to kick in. So I could take them right before I left for work, drive into work safely. But by the time I got to work, they would have kicked in. And I was just sort of numb the rest of the day.
Wow.
Yeah. And I remember driving, like leaving my house in the morning to drive to work thinking, is this it? Is this all there is to life? Like, I did all the things I was told I was supposed to do. Like, I go to college, get a good job, progress in that job, have friends, go out, travel, have good people. Like, but I was still, even what you said is like, I was like, is this it? Is this all there is to life? Because if this is all there is to life, no thanks.
Yeah.
I'd like to give it back.
Yeah.
And we're getting closer now, on and off with the medications, on and off with the back pain. And I reached a point, I want to say 2011, 2012. So kind of been going through this slowly for 2 years, ignoring my emotional and mental state and just thinking it's all physical genetic, that I start having suicidal thoughts. Not that I would actually go through with it, but for a good several weeks as I'm driving home on the highway from work, the thought would pop into my head of, oh, if I just turn the wheel a little bit this way, I could run my car into that median and it would all be over. And then the very next thought.
Or you'd just be paralyzed and then really stuck.
Yeah, that would suck. That would suck too. But the very second thought that would cross my mind is, oh, but then that would cause accidents for everyone behind me. And I certainly didn't want to injure anyone else. And so it wasn't anything that I would actually carry out, but pretty regularly for a couple of weeks in that state of like not feeling great. That thought would come into my mind like every day coming home from work. And this is where, again, I give credit to my higher self, to my spirit team, because finally one day it dawned on me, like, these are not normal thoughts. These are not healthy thoughts. Maybe you should go talk to somebody. So through our company's insurance, they had, certain number of therapy sessions. So I found a therapist that was near me. I did like the 6 sessions or whatever that was free. And I learned about codependency. Guess who's a recovering codependent? Learned about self-sacrifice, learning that no is a complete sentence. Like I had 0 boundaries. All of these things I learned about during that time that was very invaluable. But I had my 6 sessions. I now had my medication. I'm feeling fine. So we just repressed and suppressed.
Yeah.
Everything that I was going through. I just chose to ignore it.
You didn't want to feel it anymore.
Mm-hmm. I was not about to go deeper or explore anything.
Yeah.
It's like, this is just what happens in life. And so at some point then we fast forward 2013, it's time for me to make a career change. I finally decided that maybe this environment isn't good for me. Go to another environment, also not good for me. Just
traded another one.
Just traded it because I didn't deal with the problem.
Yeah.
I didn't deal with any of my emotions at that time. So the same situation just kept popping up for me. So again, lack of boundaries. So in this job, my back gets progressively worse and I am working all hours. My commute is now to a different town technically in the area, and it's an hour one way, an hour and a half back with traffic. But again, getting paid a lot of money, and this is what you're supposed to want. This is the next progression in the career path you have chosen. So this is what you're supposed to do. And I did that job for about 2 years, burned myself out completely because I didn't know how to say no, and had to have back surgery at the end of 2014. In fact, because I was working so much and felt like it was all on me to do, I scheduled my back surgery for December 31st, 2014, because that was the last day for my insurance to cover. So I chose New Year's Eve to have a surgery. Because I'm like, this is the way my brain was so effed up and was working. Like, I have to work to the very last minute because I'd met my deductible for insurance. I couldn't delay it any longer. And the surgeon had told me, I want to write you out of work for like 6 months for this recovery. Yeah. And I was like, oh, no. I can't be gone that long. Like I have a
You're
job.
so important.
I'm so important. I have to be the one to do this work. I will say during this time leading up to the surgery, I was asking my leadership for help, and we're in a hiring freeze. Hang on a little longer. Maybe after the new year, we can get you some help. Just keep going. You're doing fine.
How many times do you hear that?
Learned a lot of great lessons for myself about boundaries during this time. Anyway, I told the doctor I can't be gone that long. I said, how about 6 weeks? And he looked at me like I was crazy and said, I'll write you out for however long you want to be written out. It's your choice. So then what I did is I negotiated at work to be out for 4 weeks. And then I would work from home for 2 weeks. And then I went straight back into the office. Meanwhile, I've got this giant brace around my back. I had 6 months of physical therapy, like all the things, and I'm just pushing through. So I go back to work, and I'm only at work for a couple of weeks when I realize I can't do it anymore. Like I finally realized that my body broke because I was trying to do it this way, pushing by sheer will force to get this stuff done. So this is really the start of me realizing that I had to make changes in my life. And I was talking to you and I'm like, I think I have to quit my job. And you're like, yeah, quit your job. This is terrible for you. I said, well, I can't afford my rent if I quit my job. And you said, well, what's the worst that could happen? I said, I'm going to have to move in with you. You're going to have to pay for me to live there. And you said, okay, so you'll move in with me.
Yeah.
Thank God for you. So
Thank God for Ian.
Thank God for Ian. Yes. Cause
His room.
I got to take his room. Poor sweet little Ian. He was like 4 at the time.
Yeah. But you know what? We've traded because you've taken us in too. So
it's all good.
It works out.
So that's what happened. I quit my job in March, and that was an interesting day because a lot happened to you that same day. You know, I went in on my last day of work. I presented to the global team that was in town.
Of course you did.
Our meeting was in the morning, and then at noon I left. It was like, peace out.
You've learned nothing so far.
I've learned nothing.
So far.
I learned nothing. I went in on my very last day to present to the global team. Oh, by the way, after I left, they replaced me with 3 people.
Yep. That's how it always works.
Always how it happens.
Always.
So no bitterness. That was my lesson to learn. But then this was mid-March. I think we all went back to Wichita for Easter, which was early April. And Dad tells us he has cancer. And it was like
another blow.
Another blow.
A blow to the beautiful Cinderella story going on.
So I am angry at this point. I'm angry because Dad had symptoms for a year leading up to it. Never went to the doctor.
And I know I told him to go to the doctor
multiple times.
A year before. And he never did.
And I am, in my mind, went to, you don't love us enough to take care of yourself. I realized that was not the case. He didn't love himself enough to take care of himself. But that was years later that I came to that healing understanding. Yeah. In that moment, I was angry. Yeah. I was real angry about all of it. And with no one really to blame, I blamed him for sure. So we struggled a lot that year. But I distinctly remember at some point, summertime of 2015, I am in my 4-year-old nephew's Pikachu decorated bedroom where I now live and angry about Dad, still in physical pain, still on a lot of medications.
You're unemployed. There's no romantic relationship.
Nothing.
You're like, I got nothing.
I hit my rock bottom and I am laying on the floor crying because without a job, my whole identity was tied up to my job. It was my title. It's what I did, who I was and had been. And then I carried that over into everything else I did, to where my job was my identity, my title. So when you find yourself without a job, who are you? Who are you? You're certainly not the good daughter you thought you were either, because you have all this anger toward your dad, maybe unjustifiably so, but all in that, right? So it was in that moment that I realized, again, I needed help. But I felt drawn, instead of going to traditional therapy, I found my first intuitive coach. And that was, again, through a connection of one of my dear friends who'd been seeing this coach for a couple of years. And I had noticed the changes in her for the positive and was like, okay, well, let me try this. And she was an incredible lifeline. But yeah, I went through a good, before I really started to feel better, probably a good year.
Yeah, so let's jump ahead a little bit, because I know we've chatted a lot about that and Ginny and finding that. Is there a point when you felt like you were on the other side of your dark night?
I would say I thought so. So there were moments of, I really was learning, because learning, depending upon who you are, it took me time. It doesn't always have to take people time. It took me time to find my accountability in my burnout situation, where I realized, okay, a company is just a company. Like, they're beholden to their shareholders if they're public, or they're beholden to their owners if they're private. The job of the company is to make a profit. So I'm detaching emotional connection and all personal connection to the job, to where it said, okay, a company will take whatever you're willing to give. And I was willing to give everything. And I learned through working with that coach that I didn't have to give everything and that I needed boundaries. So from that perspective, I have never gone back. I have never given a company 200% of myself. Sometimes only 15 if I felt that was it for the day. So, but I learned through that experience. So when I say I kind of felt like I did, so I want to say it was about 14 months later after I quit my job that I finally got another full-time job. It took that long to really sort of heal some of those areas of my life. But I didn't heal them all because I found myself in a toxic leader situation that required more effort to detach from and get neutral to.
But I also think, so part of the dark night is to have that breakdown in order to find the breakthrough.
Yeah.
And so you found a lot. Yes, you found yourself in a similar situation, but now you've got tools.
I've got tools. I've got help.
You recognized it.
Yes.
I think pretty quickly.
I did pretty quickly recognize that I'd found myself in a similar situation. Yeah. So that was me getting to practice the new boundaries.
That's right.
That I was finding. And in doing so, it also helped me practice how to get neutral about situations that I did not like or want to be in. So again, detaching the emotion from it. There was, again, a lot to learn from that job and situation I found myself in. It was really helping me identify what I liked, what I didn't like, what do I really want to do. I was trying something new at the time. And I found that, it's just not for me. I mean, I was there for about 2 years, and eventually I did get a different leader who was phenomenal. And had I already not decided that that wasn't the type of work I wanted to do, I could have easily stayed for her because she was a fantastic person and fantastic leader. So to me, that was a signal that I was learning something because I was able to attract something different into that current situation from the leadership perspective. I said, okay, I'm going to get neutral and detached from this negative leader and negative experience to where I'm not going to let it impact me as directly as I was allowing it by having better boundaries, all of that, less codependency, knowing that anyone could do that job, but it wasn't me. They didn't need me specifically from that perspective. So it helped me detach in that way. And then when I got to a very neutral place is when that leader was moved out and the new one came in. So I was starting to learn to shift my reality. I was starting to learn how to manifest during that time. So good things were happening, but again, the universe is going to keep showing you that situation to say, okay, have you learned your lesson? Are you really healing? And if so, great. If not, there's more work to do. So I definitely had a little bit more work to do, but it was never to the place of complete loss of identity, complete loss of all light like I had in that 2015 year.
Yeah. So I think as you found the tools to start working through that, that's when more light started coming in from that darkness.
I started to remember who I was and started to release those titles. So I have never identified myself with a job, even the job that I do today, whether that's being an astrologer or a frequency healer, intuitive coach myself. That's not who I am. It's more what I do. I have learned, through astrology and through human design and other tools, more of who my soul is and what my soul's purpose and mission is. And my soul's purpose and mission is nothing to do with financial, it's nothing to do with a job to earn money.
Yep.
I mean, I have money and I welcome more money in because money's not bad. It's just an energy. So I don't repel it in any way, but that's not who I am anymore.
But if you think about the dark night, a lot of that was all the conditioning from your entire life that was building up, and it almost had to explode or burst for you to come through that conditioning to see truly who you are.
100%.
And I say that but really it's all of us. I think something typically triggers in order for us to see the real us.
Yeah, The Untethered Soul was probably my first spiritual book that came in right at that time. I believe my coach at the time had recommended I get that book. It's very short, but it's very, very deep.
Very good.
Very dense. So it's one that you want to read a couple of times really to get the whole picture. But that's exactly what I needed in that moment because it's really about the voice in our head that tells us all those stories and remembering that that voice isn't who we are. And so it was me starting to recognize when that voice pops up, still does, obviously. But I recognize it just as a voice now. And I recognize and can get out of that space and get out of that energy quickly. So now, again, it's not all love and light. We'll talk about shadow work because that always comes up. But I have not gone through such a major unwinding of who I have not had to, I say, to go through that major collapse of self. Thank God, because it was not fun. But it was necessary. Like I said, I can look back on that time with love and compassion because I grew so much. I learned so much. It was not fun to go through, but it was necessary. So tell me about you. Tell us about you, because you had a different experience, and I think it's equally valuable.
Yeah, my experience was very different, and I chatted a lot about this before, so I'm not going to go through all of it again. But I would say, looking back, because I was really trying to ponder when we said we're going to talk about the dark night. I was like, did I have a one dark night? And I really didn't. And I think part of it was just, again, life stage things that were happening. Again, looking back, my team gave me lots of nudges. And the first one was, my back trouble started when I was working for Pizza Hut, and I survived about 4 years before I needed back surgery through, much like Dana, with injections and physical therapy. And it wasn't until I left, I believe it was that, was it right before? Now I'm like, what? When was it? And I got to think about this. But I remember it was to the point where I couldn't stand, and Mike had to rush me to the doctor, and they were like, we need to get an x-ray. And I said, I can't stand. And they're like, we're getting you in tonight. Literally plopped me in a bed, did back surgery. I actually had no time to think about it or to schedule it because I was so hunched over and couldn't move. So I think that was the first, and I'd been so unhappy in my job for so long that I think it was like, hey. And then finally I was just ignoring it. And then finally I had to have the back surgery. And that was when I was not employed. I talked about proactively leaving. And so you want to talk about, I had to return the favor to Dana because she took my whole family in to her house, and I had just had back surgery. And I remember laying in the guest room, and our mom had come down. I think she wasn't living here yet, right?
No, she wasn't.
But
so
she was down here to help. You've got toddlers running around your house. Like, you're not used to that. So we're all crammed in there, and we lived there for what, 4 or 5 months?
I think 4 or 5 months,
something like that. And I was like, I don't know what. So because we sold our house, because we were, my husband was commuting over an hour, so we were like, let's just move. I didn't know what I was going to do, and so I spent a lot of that time trying to figure it out. And that's when I distinctly remember thinking, there's got to be more than this. Mm-hmm. It can't just be me going and getting another job. Like, the job is the job. But because of what I did, being in media, it was always a struggle to work for a brand because no one bought into the media. No one really bought into the expertise. And so I felt and of course now knowing my design, a lot of bitterness came from waiting for my invitation. But I also felt like me getting another job, I don't think is going to solve what I was feeling inside. And I really struggled with trying to figure out what that was. And I processed, okay, well, I have to get a job because that's what you do. You go to college, you get a job, and we had a dual income, and my kids are in private school. I need a job. Okay, what job? Do I want to keep doing the same job? And I really spent a lot of time trying to figure out. So I got stuck in my head about it's the type of job. And
it's the job's fault.
It's the job. And
if I have a different job, it'll be better.
That's right. And so that's where I got trapped a little bit. And because my guides were telling me it's time for a change. But in my mind, it was just a new job. And so I spent almost a year stressing about finding that new job, to the point where a job that came up that I thought I would enjoy, but was well below my market value, was an 1.5-hour commute. But I'm like, well, I need a job, so I'm going to take it. And and I did that job for almost 2 years. And the whole time I was bitter because I wasn't getting my market value. I loved the people I worked with. I loved what I did. But then, lo and behold, someone new comes in and they are wanting to blow everything up. And I'm like, well, this guy he's a piece of work. So I find myself back in a similar situation again. And this time I'm doing my thing, but I got a sense, my spidey senses said, because they said we're going to have some layoffs. And I was like, surely not me. But I remember going to my boss saying, if there are going to be layoffs, can you just give me a heads up and I will start looking for a new job? And he's like, no, everything's fine. Don't worry about it. Well, guess what? That was me. And, I didn't feel I felt pressure, but a little bit of relief because I was like, well, I was commuting an hour and a half. I don't have to do that anymore. But with the first layoff, it hits the ego big time because it really digs into they didn't like you or you weren't good enough, which was absolutely not the case. And for that layoff, my boss at the time, I got laid off because he didn't find the value in media and wanted to do a whole different role. And looking back, honestly, again, it was my guides. They come in and give you that extra push if you're not going to do it yourself. And that company went bankrupt and they only exist online anymore. So again, it was a beautiful thing that happened. But at the time you start to question, again, your own value, your self-worth. What did I do wrong? And again, and now going through my second life, I know that you didn't do anything wrong. And of course, having the experience and looking back now, I want to go back and comfort that younger me to say, you did everything just right. You were okay. You never should have taken that job. You did that wrong. But
oh wow, judging yourself still.
Right.
You just said you wanted to give her love and compassion.
In a loving way. No, in a loving way. But I learned a lot and met wonderful people. So I wouldn't change that. And that's when we found out about Dad. Much like you, I was very angry because that was when my ego, that know-it-all came out and said, I told you and you didn't listen.
You didn't listen to me.
You didn't listen to me. And now you've done this. And it could have been prevented. And all I could think about was, you're not going to be here to see my kids grow up.
But he is seeing them grow up. And soon they'll see him too.
that sounds so creepy.
It does, but it's
true. That's what hit me, right?
Yeah.
Is how can you be this selfish?
Yeah.
Anywho, so for me, my dark nights started, but it was like these little bits, right, that kind of kept hitting me, but I wasn't ready to listen.
Sure.
It was like I was like half listening, like, okay, hear you, I need a new job. Okay, that wasn't what they were telling me, right? And then it was like, well, I got this job and then I tried this and I'm doing this, but each time I felt like I had learned and grown from the previous experience. So that's where I think it's important with all the experiences that you have is to take that in and say, did you learn something from them? Or are you just repeating the same pattern? Now, did I go out and get another media job? I did, but I was more cautious or potentially more selective in what I got, what I did.
Well, you created the next job, technically.
I did create, yes, I created my job after Pier 1. And so true manifestation.
It's pretty cool.
And for a short time it was great. And then things slowly, start to fall apart. And you start to look back and going, all of these jobs have the same trend, which is it starts out great. And then all of a sudden things start to reveal themselves and you're like, it's not what I thought it was.
And this can be true not just of jobs, but of relationships people find themselves in. So it can be romantic relationship patterns that we repeat. Guilty over here of that too. It could be friendship patterns. It could be patterns within the family. So our experiences were more focused around job because I think that's a lot of how we identified ourselves.
That's right.
But if you could be a different type of relationship, if you identify strongly with that as maybe a caregiver or something else that can trigger this saying, okay, wait, that's not all you are.
Absolutely. I think that's very fair. And yes, I think because career was always so important, and we had 2 parents that worked and both really enjoyed their careers, were very passionate about it. And I think we all wanted to feel that too.
Just assumed we were supposed to.
Yes, it was what you did.
Mm-hmm.
And honestly, I loved my career as far as media. And so when I had decided to, jump back in and get this other job, I was going back and forth between, could I do anything else, or is this it? And do I love what I do? And so what it boiled down to is I said, you know what? I do love what I do. I just need to find the right place to do it. And
you did for a while.
For beats. And for me, I always said, after 4 years, it's maybe time to change it up, right? And that's where I didn't learn my lesson, right? In my last job, I was there for 8.5. And I will say though, at 4, I was like, it's time for me to go. But I think I didn't leave because, one, I didn't know where to go to, because I also knew in my soul that doing more of the same was not going to be beneficial for me. And so in the absence of not knowing, I just stayed, right? You stay put.
It's very common, I think. What we're all having to learn, especially right now, I think collectively, because of the shifts in the world, is we are having to learn to trust the unknown.
Yep.
To believe that we're all taken care of always, and to allow it to unfold in fun and exciting, surprising ways when we trust that they will come out in fun and surprising ways, that it's not going to be doom and gloom.
Trust is the biggest, I think, issue that anyone and everyone has, because we, and like you said, our ego, we want to control things. And I have always been a controller since firstborn, but I'm not going to put it on that, right? My soul chose that to learn, because this is the first time in my life that I would say I have to truly let go. And it is terrifying, but it is exciting, because there is an unknown factor that's actually feels a little bit adventurous.
Yes. I love adventure.
And I would, so I did have a decent run for a time. I would say my next mini dark night was probably 2020. And I was so happy that I had found a spiritual community, and I was learning about myself and growing about myself, because a lot of hard things started coming up. And I recognized the fear that was surrounding me, almost engulfing me. And I thought, I'm not going to give in to that fear. And if I have to make a choice between a job or the health of my body, I'm choosing my body. And so I made that decision. So that's where I feel like I had grown, and I could then see myself differently than I had before, where I recognized what was important to me, and I had to make decisions for my kids, because their school was doing things that I was not aligned to, and I felt was harmful to them. And it was scary to be kind of on my own in that sense, because I didn't have other families. I was lucky, like Dana, my whole family supported the decisions that we made. Couldn't have done it without my husband, but we had to make a very difficult decision in a very short amount of time, which is my kids started kindergarten and were at the same school. And then my oldest was going into 8th grade and my youngest was going into 5th. And this was it 2021, I think?
2021, yeah.
And for me, the school had been doing dictates obviously since 2020. And so, initially went along for the ride with that. But of course, my one in my profile, that's my researcher. I started researching in 2020 and I did not stop until,
still doing it.
Still doing it. But I had written letters to the principal. I had written letters, I don't know, like anyone who would listen. With proof and documentation, and saying, this is harmful to our children, what you are doing. And basically his answer was, it's out of my control, because my kids went to Catholic school. It was up to the diocese.
Pass the buck.
Correct. And so, because I could not get on board with it, we yanked my kids out of school. They had already started school. and I yanked them out of school, and I had to find what within, a
couple of
days. And was grateful for a friend of mine who, the school they were going to, now it's 25 minutes from our house, but they were very much of, we are going to put it in the parents' hands and make decisions because you are the parents. And I was so drawn to the fact that they were allowing us as the parents to make decisions for our children. And it was, the reason it was one of the hardest decisions is because my oldest was like, great, sign me up. He's my extrovert. My youngest was like, oh my God,
terrified.
No, I will do anything to stay where I'm at. And I had to yank him out. And so, God, it sucked so bad. And I was worried about him for a year. And now he's fine. He's fine. He's fine. Kids are resilient. He made great friends. And now it's to the point where he doesn't want to leave. But that was a very, very difficult time for me. And I was just very grateful that my husband was like, we're going to do this. Okay, I support you. And we did it. And here we are.
It was hard because all of the other parents and all the other moms that you'd known through all of these years with your kids attending this school didn't know what the big deal was.
Correct.
Didn't understand your choices.
Correct.
Didn't understand why it mattered. And you were alone in that.
Correct.
And it's easy to think in those situations that you're the crazy one.
That's right. Now, knowing my incarnation cross and knowing that's what I'm here to do is to disrupt.
Mm-hmm.
And to bring about sudden change. I can get on board with it a little bit better, but it's hard. Again, feeling alone, and that's my core wound is my gate of aloneness, feeling I have to do it myself, but that's also what I'm here to do. And once I recognize that I can give out of love from the overflow and not from obligation, that's when that gift really starts to show up. And so now I see it as a true gift, and I wouldn't ever change a thing, except maybe being more vocal. I was very afraid to be vocal or speak my truth for fear of judgment. Or being talked about. And now I'm like, talk about me.
Yeah.
Whatever you want.
Who
cares? What you say about me is none of my business.
We did our first family protest.
Oh, we did.
We made signs.
We did. That was actually pretty cool.
It was pretty fun. Our brother came to town to support us.
Yep.
It was awesome.
Support for our freedom of our own choices as human beings and being sovereign beings. Mm-hmm. And so, yeah, that was a lot. I think that was a really big wake up call for me as to who I am inside, my soul's calling, and what I am meant to do. And so parts of me is like, I wish that didn't happen. And the other part of me is like, I'm very grateful because I don't know if I would be where I'm at today without having gone through those challenging times. So those are, all slightly different examples, but they are ways to wake you up to who you are as a person and what you're meant to do. And are you going to, despite your knowing of what's right and wrong, are you going to go along with the crowd because you want to feel belong, that you belong and feel safe, feel it's an illusion? Or are you going to stay true to yourself, what your intuition is calling to you, and you know what the right thing to do, even if it's the hard thing, you know what it is. And so are you going to stand in that truth, or are you going to fold? And I was very grateful. And here's the thing too, we found a community unbeknownst to us who also stood in their truth. And so while the numbers were very much against us, we had a community that allowed us to be us. And while it felt maybe a little covert and undercover at the time, because there was a lot of fear.
Subverting the rules.
But yeah, because we have always been rule followers. Mm-hmm. And so that was really hard, I think, to let go of that identity of you follow the rules and you do what you're told and
never question.
And you never question. And for us to flip that upside down was,
it did the job, but that's what those years were about. One of the many things those years were about was standing in your power, standing in your divine sovereignty, whatever that is for you and whatever feels aligned for you. And that can be different for different people. But I think for us, it was, okay, are we going to blindly follow rules that now we know aren't effective
and
or right.
They didn't make sense even.
No. Like it was the illusion was revealed. The man behind the curtain was exposed. So are you going to just keep going along because everyone else is? Or are you going to be true to who you are, who you know yourself to be?
Yep.
In any situation. So that was the point, because that was a hard situation. It was okay, are you going to walk through the fire or avoid it altogether? And I had spent most of my life avoiding the fire.
Yep.
And it was like, no, we're going to embrace it now. And again, to your point, we had a very supportive community, small but mighty, who were like, we're texting each other and giving us support. Like, I'm going to go into that store without a mask on. I'm like, yeah, girl, you do it. It's going to be fine. Oh, I did it. I just came out. People looked at me, but nothing else happened.
Yeah.
So those little baby steps like kept giving you more encouragement and more courage to do more and keep going. And so, throughout that, it's like, okay, we've made it to the other side, and we know ourselves better. We know what our boundaries are, what we will tolerate, what we won't tolerate. And we're learning that we are the creators of this reality. So create good things. We don't have to create scary things.
Well, and that's exactly right. Through all of those lessons and challenges and my many nights, for me, was look at what you're capable of, and look at how strong you are, and look at, again, how sovereign and resilient, and like how amazing.
That was us bursting out of the chrysalis and strengthening our wings.
Yeah.
These little challenges that come up, you're like, okay, now I know my wings are strong enough to fly. Doesn't mean you don't get sometimes caught in the wind, but you can course correct.
Yeah.
Like you have the strength now to course correct.
And you know what? We flew.
We did. We still are.
It was awesome. Well, yeah, we really are now. So, so let's see. What helps you move through it? So I think we talked a lot about community.
Asking
certainly.
for help. Don't be afraid to ask for help. Whatever help looks like to you. Could be a friend.
For you started with therapy, and then you went to a healer.
Then I went to a healer.
You leaned on family.
I leaned on family for sure. I allowed myself to ask for help.
I think something that I have found, which I used to do all the time and then I stopped, but I found great benefit, is journaling.
Yes.
And that can also help you really uncover, because sometimes if you just start writing, all of a sudden things will start to flood out that you may not have even knew were there. And then you can start examining those. And I think that really helps, especially as you're going through a dark night. Putting your feelings on paper, I think, can help you start to get to the root cause of where some of this stuff is coming from, and can help you find your way through it.
Yeah. It's acknowledging the trauma and releasing it. And there's many ways to do that, journaling being a great one. Meditation. During that time is when I found meditation, really and truly. Breath work, movement. So yoga, there's all kinds of body work you can do to kind of release stuck trauma in the body. Grounding, really important. And there's many ways to do that, but simple is just go put your feet in the dirt. I mean, or go sit by a tree. I don't have really dirt near me, and I kind of get chiggers. So I have a tree in my backyard. I go and I put my hands on my tree, and I just live on my tree.
But you also talk about, depending on the
your elemental
element, getting in that element. So being a Scorpio, water is really good.
All of it is tied to nature. Yeah. So all the forms of nature is really grounding. So whether that's being in water, looking at water, and this includes your shower, doesn't have to be the ocean, although that's the most lovely, but it doesn't have to be. And then whether that's being outside, being in the earth, being in the sunshine for that fire sign, and then breathing, breath work, speaking it out loud can be helpful too.
But I think the biggest thing too is recognizing this is not something to be fixed. You have to feel through it.
Yeah.
And for those that maybe you're seeing friends, family, anyone go through, they have to. You can't fix it for them either, and there's not a solve. They have to go through it, but you can offer tools. Yeah. I think to help support them and just be there for them.
We talk about sending energy. You don't want to give away energy you don't have, but you can hold space for someone going through a difficult time. You can talk to their higher self and have conversations.
Oh, that's always a good one. You remind me of that a lot, and I forget.
I talk to people's higher self all the time. So even if you're having a challenge with someone, whether it's someone you work with or someone in your family, you don't have to have a difficult conversation face to face with them. You can talk to their higher self. If someone is going through the dark night that you have observed in your life, I often like to say, remember who you are. to their higher self, just say, remember who you are. Remember who you are. I say that to your boys sometimes, their higher selves too.
I love that.
I'm like, remember who you are, because you're so amazing.
There's a beautiful song we need to put in the show notes. It's escaping me. It's Remember. It's called Remember, that Jenny gave us.
Oh, yes, the Omkara.
Yes.
Yeah.
We need to put that in. I love that song.
That's a great one.
That's a great
That's
song.
like basically like a 6-minute little meditation that you can do whenever you want. Yes, I do love that song too.
Yeah.
It's a meditative song of like, it's basically remember who you are.
Yeah, that one will.
We're more than this reality.
Get you right here.
Yep. Yeah, crying is a great release.
Yep.
I did a lot of crying during that time. A lot of crying.
Yeah.
And I think as you mentioned, you can't fix it for people. So, and this is true for your kids. They will go through things that you can't fix for them. They've come in with their own wounds and things they need to fix and heal in themselves. So I know that you struggled a lot with changing schools for your youngest, who was resistant to it. But that was also potentially a lesson that he had signed up to experience for his own growth.
But as a parent, I wouldn't have been able to see how strong he really was if I had done it for him. And I'm learning that a lot right now. Stop doing things for them, because they are stronger than we think they are.
Yeah.
And they have that resilience. And the sooner that they can learn and know that, the better.
They have to grow too. You don't want to take that experience away from them. The same is true of like, you don't want to save someone because you're basically saying they're not capable. I mean, I know you, because you love that person, you don't want to see them suffer. But if you try to fix it for them, you're saying that you don't believe they're capable. And I'm like, I believe everyone is capable, right? Like, I don't want to take that. I don't want to take someone else's power away from them.
Well, and again, once they go through it,
yeah,
what an amazing change, hopefully, that they can learn from and grow from. And again, you'd be taking that away if you
took it. Yeah, tried to fix it for
them.
So the idea is this can take as long as it needs to take. Somebody could go through it in a day. Somebody might need multiple years. There's no right or wrong to it.
Can be off and on like a switch.
Can be off and on. You can have multiple. There's no wrong way to have this experience. And again, some souls may not have signed up for a very deep one. Could just be a little blip, and then they're like, oh, that's not who I am. Okay, I'm going to move forward. So it doesn't have to be crazy. I believe I'm here to also heal some generational trauma. So I think I had a lot ancestrally that I was also clearing, not only that I'd brought in with me. I think a lot of us, especially our age group, has that within them. So maybe not all of it was even mine, but I needed to go through something very deep, dark, and painful so I could clear it for everyone behind me and everyone, in the future of this generational line. So I take that as an honor. That's something that my soul signed up to do.
Yeah, you're strong enough to do it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, and so you might see people around you. They could be, again, job changes, moving, divorces, friendships ending, deaths. Those are all potentially signs of a dark night of the soul. And that will lead to a lot of shadow work that needs to be done. And that's going to be what our next episode is on, is shadow work and all the different things that we've done.
What triggers you.
Triggers, and then how to recognize that and how to work through it. And it's an ongoing process, because, by the way, you're never done, I don't think.
I haven't experienced being done yet.
We can't speak to being done yet, but
still in it.
We're it's a constant work in progress.
But it does get easier. It does get faster. And again, you're just, building your muscle, getting stronger.
Yes.
Well, before we close, we have an affirmation we'd like to share, and Corri's going to pull a card. So this affirmation will help if you're going through your own dark night of the soul, or you can share it with others. Here we go. Even in darkness, I am being guided. What feels like an ending is the beginning of my becoming. I surrender to the unraveling. I trust that my soul knows the way home. Nice.
Perfect. All right. Card for the week. Hopefully it's more uplifting than the dark night of the soul.
We need a little light now.
Yes. Give us some yummies. I feel this card right here. Oh, okay. The card is Compass. So I actually think this ties in really nicely to the dark night. And I think the dark night, everything starts to crumble. But once you come out of it, you start to find that compass and you start to figure out where you're moving to next. And I felt that greatly. It took time, but I do think that the compass of your life is right there for you to grab at any time. And again, you may or may not need a dark night to get there, but know that if you get to that dark night, you'll find your way.
Beautiful. I love that message. And I love the imagery of the compass.
Yeah, there you go.
Okay, thanks, y'all. Bye. Thanks for catching up with us on the Cosmic Catchup. If today's episode sparked something in your soul, hit subscribe, leave a review, and share the magic with your fellow seekers. You can hang with us on Instagram at the Cosmic Catchup for behind-the-scenes updates and more cosmic goodness.
And if you're feeling the call to go deeper, we offer personal guidance through our individual practices. All the details are in the show notes. And if it's aligned, we trust you'll feel it. Until next time, keep following the magic. The content we share reflects our personal experiences, insights, and opinions. We're not medical, legal, or financial professionals, and we encourage you to always do your own research, trust your intuition, and seek guidance from qualified experts when needed. Take what resonates and leave the rest. This journey is yours to explore.